we went from investing 250 million in Bitcoin to 425 million in Bitcoin to eventually $1 billion in Bitcoin to $2 billion in Bitcoin to just slightly less than $4 billion in Bitcoin. And the result I just said, right, for our shareholders, our stock outperformed every big tech company, every asset class, and every enterprise software company. I think we did the number and we calculated we outperformed 485 of the 500 S&P companies over that time period. And then in terms of the corporation itself, we added billions and billions of dollars to the enterprise value of the company. So it's paid off so far, even though we get thrashed this way and that way by volatility.
Right.
Now, the war in Russia, the war in the Ukraine, the utterances of the Central Bank of Europe, the utterances of the Federal Reserve, all of those things impact our stock. The first 500 million was equity, and then the next 500 million, or the next 1.7 billion was convertible debt, but it was converting into equity, and it's unsecured debt, so it's not related to the Bitcoin. It just becomes equity at some point in the future. And then the next 500 million was a junk bond, but that was secured against the cash flows of the software business, which is very stable. That can be refinanced in the future. And it was a 7-year junk bond. So again, not really correlated to Bitcoin. It was only the last 205 million where we pledged some Bitcoin as collateral. So that's our famous Bitcoin-backed loan, our Bitcoin-backed, loan facility with Silvergate. And we calculated that when we did that, we were 20x over collateralized. Like we had 20 times as much Bitcoin as the loan. And right now we're probably 10x over collateralized. I think if Bitcoin got down to 3,500 a Bitcoin, then we'd have to come up with some other collateral.
Okay.
But, we just announced another $500 million at the market equity shelf registration. So we've just used a balance of equity, long-term debt, secured debt, unsecured debt, just a very thin layer of borrowing against the asset itself. And we primarily did that just to prove it could be done in order to legitimize it as an asset you could borrow against. So the answer to your question is, I don't really worry so much about that. It's at some point if Bitcoin gets to 2,000, then I have to adjust some.
Are you buying more or plan to buy more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we are.
There are some ideas in the crypto ecosystem which are good ideas that have been poorly executed or executed in an immature fashion that has been counterproductive. Bitcoin is the greatest execution of the idea of a digital commodity because it is not just a commodity, it's a scarcity. It's an asset without an issuer that's absolutely capped. The second, and it has a role, right, as a long-term store of value or as a base layer for the digital economy or the entire world economy in the future.
If I have an increment of $10 million of cash flow, do I put it into bonds? Do I put it into gold? Do I buy silver? Do I buy land? Do I buy art? Do I buy Bitcoin? So I still think Bitcoin is the most scarce, most desirable, highest quality property as a long-term store of value. So I think generally for us, we've adopted a very simple strategy. We keep enough working capital to last us a year, normally in the range of about $50 million in US dollars. And then when we have excess cash, either from operating income or any other financing opportunity, we put that into our treasury reserve asset. And we have adopted Bitcoin as our primary treasury reserve asset. So we're 100% treasury reserves in Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is ethical because it's an asset without an issuer. Lightning is ethical because it is an open protocol, and the fees that run it are Satoshis. And Satoshis are, of course, ethical money. So if you had an open, fair protocol running on an ethical money, and then you gave tokens to creators, and you gave dollars to people in Africa that would otherwise starve, or they're locked out of the world economy without dollars, and if you gave them Bitcoin as the digital scarcity asset, And if you gave them access to these DeFi ideas and exchanges 24/7, 365, but it was ethical, right? Not only, that's the first check, it's got to be ethical. The second check is it's got to be technically sound. Lightning's technically sound. You could support billions of people and do billions of transactions a day, quick and cheap, technically sound. And then third, it's got to be economically sound. You could create a digital commodity that had an inflation rate of 10% a year forever. It's not economically sound to have a continual inflation rate, like Dogecoin has continual inflation. So Bitcoin is economically sound because it's capped scarcity.
You might decide that you're going to split your treasury reserves 1/3 property, 1/3 art, 1/3 Bitcoin, or 1/3 S&P stocks or something, right? It's a preference for an individual or an investor. But of course, our company, MicroStrategy, has adopted a Bitcoin strategy, and we have transparently communicated that to all of our outside shareholders, and that is in our 10K filing. So when someone buys MicroStrategy stock, they know what they're getting. They don't want us to hedge or juggle 16 different assets. So if I showed up and said, hey, I found it, we can buy a Picasso and I got a good deal on it, we think that's better than Bitcoin, all my shareholders would freak out because they don't want to invest in an art hedge fund or a real estate hedge fund. They want someone that's got a Bitcoin strategy. So from a corporate point of view, it's the right thing for us to do. I personally think it's the highest quality property in the world, and I think it will appreciate the best over time. And as I pointed out to you, it has performed the best in the past 2 years versus every other option. So
Bitcoin is the apex crypto property and the apex crypto asset, and people will simply hold it as a long-term store of value. And if the regulator said everything in the crypto ecosystem is now, forbidden, all you can do is buy Bitcoin and hold it and sell it at the end of its useful life, treat it like gold, Bitcoin would still benefit. And the truth is, the only thing that is clearly good for Bitcoin is if we were able to disentangle ourselves from the crypto casinos. Right? Because the crash of Terra, the crash of Luna, the crash of Celsius, the crash of FTX, these have been painful events, and Bitcoin is cross-collateralized, and they're selling Bitcoin when they're crashing their doggy coins and their hamster coins and their yo-yo coins. And so shutting that down will be good for Bitcoin. It'll take the volatility out of Bitcoin. And then these other regulatory guidelines,